They say home is where the heart is. I brought my heart to Canada, and she took the house with her when she left. I'm 62 years old. I thought I knew what love looked like. I thought I understood trust. I was wrong about everything. 3 years ago, I had a house, a future, and a woman who called me her everything. Today, I'm sleeping in a rental apartment, and she's back in Thailand. Fill my house deed in her name. If you've ever loved someone so much you'd give them everything, this story is for you. Because sometimes everything isn't enough. If you like our videos, please subscribe and comment where you're watching from. Your support means everything to stories like mine. I remember the exact moment I signed my life away. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I wrote my name next to hers on the house deed. Maidee squeezed my fingers and whispered, "Thank you for believing in us." The lawyer's office smelled like coffee and old books. Mr. Peterson shuffled through papers while Maidee sat beside me, her small hand warm in mine. She wore the blue dress I'd bought her in Bangkok, the one that made her eyes look like deep water. "This makes you both legal owners of the property," Mr. Peterson said. "Equal shares. Are you certain about this, Mr. Peterson?" I looked at Maidee. A single tear rolled down her cheek. She'd been through so much, her family's debt, her father's gambling, the shame of working in tourist areas just to survive. I was 62 and she was 28, but age was just a number when it came to love. "I'm certain," I said. "She deserves this security." Maidee kissed my cheek. "I love you so much, Peterson. You are my angel." I signed the papers with a steady hand. This was the right thing to do. This was what love looked like, protecting the person who mattered most. We walked out of that office as co-owners of my 3-bedroom house in Mississauga, the house I'd bought after my divorce, the house I'd planned to leave to my daughter, Sarah. But Sarah was 34 and successful. She didn't need it like Maidee did. "Now I am truly Canadian," Maidee said, laughing as we stood on the sidewalk. "Now I am home." I wrapped my arms around her tiny frame. She smelled like jasmine and hope. At that moment, I felt like the luckiest man alive. I had given her everything, and it felt perfect. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and I was finally the hero in someone's story. I should have known that heroes in real life don't get happy endings. 6 months earlier, I was drinking myself to death in a hotel room in Chiang Mai. My wife of 20 years had left me for her yoga instructor. My company had laid me off at 60 with a handshake and a severance check. My daughter barely called anymore. I was invisible, a ghost walking through life while younger men took my job, my wife, my purpose. The severance money was burning a hole in my pocket. $28,000, my retirement fund, gone. But what was I saving for anyway? A lonely old age in an empty house? Thailand seemed like a good place to disappear. Maybe drink myself into a stupor and never come back. Maybe find some meaning in the temples and mountains. Or maybe just waste away where nobody knew my name. I found Maidee at the Saturday night market in the old city. She was selling handmade jewelry from a small table, her dark hair falling over her shoulders as she worked. Most of the other vendors called out to tourists, but she sat quietly, focused on threading tiny beads. "Excuse me," I said, stopping at her table. "These are beautiful." She looked up and smiled. Not the practiced smile of someone trying to make a sale, but something genuine and warm. "Thank you," she said in careful English. "I make them myself. Each one is different, like people." I bought a bracelet for Sarah, knowing she'd probably never wear it, but I kept talking to Maidee. Her English was broken, but her laugh was perfect. She told me about her village outside Chiang Mai, her family's small farm, her dreams of studying business. "Why you come Thailand alone?" she asked. "I'm not sure anymore," I said honestly. "Maybe you come to find something you lose," she said. For the first time in months, I felt seen. Not judged, not pitied, just seen. I came back the next night, and the next. We'd talk for hours while she worked. She wasn't like the bar girls other tourists talked about. She didn't ask for money or drinks. She just listened when I told her about my divorce, my job, the feeling that life had passed me by. "You are kind man," she said one evening as the market closed around us. "Kind men deserve to be happy." When I kissed her that night, it felt like coming back to life. 3 weeks later, I asked her to come to Canada with me. She cried and said yes. For the first time in years, I had a future worth living. 2 months after bringing Maidie to Canada, I started noticing things that didn't quite fit. She was always on her phone, speaking rapid Thai in hushed voices. When I asked who she was talking to, she'd say family and change the subject. Her English, which had been charmingly broken, Thailand seemed to improve overnight. "How you say, immigration office?" she asked one morning over breakfast. "How do you need to know about immigration?" "I want to learn about becoming citizen, make sure I do everything correct." It made sense, she was being responsible, but something in her tone felt rehearsed. She started asking detailed questions about Canadian laws. How long until permanent residency? What about family sponsorship? Could she bring her mother for medical treatment? "My mother very sick," she said one evening, showing me a photo on her phone. "Thailand hospital's not good. Canada better." I offered to send money for her mother's treatment in Thailand. Maidie's face darkened. "You don't understand," she snapped. "You never understand what it's like to be poor." That night she slept in the guest room. "Too stressed," she said. "Need space to think." The space turned into a week, then 2. She'd come to bed after I was asleep and leave before I woke up. We barely talked anymore, except about practical things. Groceries, bills, her English classes. English classes I was paying for, but she never seemed to have homework. "She's adjusting," I told myself while lying alone in our king-size bed. "New country, new language, new life. Love means being patient." But late at night, when I heard her laughing on the phone in the living room, speaking English that sounded perfectly fluent, I wondered what I was being patient for. The woman I'd fallen in love with in Thailand felt like a stranger living in my house. But I pushed the doubts away. Love wasn't supposed to be easy. Love was supposed to be worth fighting for. I just didn't realize I was the only one fighting. I came home early from Loblaws that Tuesday afternoon. I'd forgotten to buy milk and turned around after driving halfway there. The front door was still locked, but I could hear Maidie's voice from the kitchen. She was speaking English, perfect, fluent English with barely a trace of accent. "The old man signed everything over," she was saying. "I just need to wait for the residency papers, then we can make our move." I stood frozen in the hallway, grocery bags in my hands. "He's so desperate to feel needed," she continued, laughing. "These lonely old guys are all the same. Promise them love and they'll give you everything." My heart hammered against my ribs. The milk carton slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a wet thud. Maidie appeared in the kitchen doorway, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw me, her face went white. "I call you back," she said quickly, switching to Thai before hanging up. "Who was that?" My voice sounded strange and distant. "YouTube," she said, scrambling. "I was practicing English with YouTube videos, learning business words." "That wasn't YouTube, Maidie. You were talking to someone." Tears filled her eyes. Real tears, or maybe just good acting. "I'm sorry, Peterson. I lie because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared you think I only want you for papers, so I pretend my English not good. That I've been taking secret classes. I want to surprise you, make you proud." She threw her arms around me, sobbing into my chest. "Please don't be angry. I do it for us. I want to be good Canadian wife for you." I wanted to believe her so badly it hurt. This woman was my second chance, my proof that life wasn't over at 60. Without her, I was just another divorced guy, drinking alone in front of the TV. "I'm not angry," I lied, stroking her hair. "I'm proud of you for studying so hard." That night, she slept in our bed again. She told me she loved me over and over, like she was trying to convince us both. But something inside me had cracked, and no amount of love could fix it. The woman I'd fallen for in Chiang Mai was disappearing piece by piece, and I was too terrified to let her go. The Facebook message came on a Thursday morning while Maidie was at her English class. "Hi mate, I know this is weird, but I think you should see these photos. This is my girlfriend, Maidie. Someone told me she's living with another man in Canada. Is this your girl?" The sender was James Mitchell from Sydney, Australia. His profile showed a guy about my age, maybe a little younger, with graying hair and kind eyes. My hands shook as I opened the photos he'd sent. There was Maidie, cuddled up to James on a beach. Maidie kissing James under the Sydney Opera House. Maidie wearing an engagement ring captioned, "She said yes, can't wait to marry my beautiful Thai princess." The photos were recent. I could tell because she was wearing the jewelry I'd bought her, the necklace from our trip to Niagara Falls, the earrings I'd given her for her birthday last month. My phone buzzed with another message from James. She told me she was working in Canada to save money for our wedding. I've been sending her $500, 0 cents Australian every month. We've been together 3 years. I thought you should know. 3 years. She'd been with him the entire time she was with me. I scrolled through more photos, my chest getting tighter with each one. Screenshots of text messages where she called him my love, my husband, my forever. Messages where she promised to come to Australia as soon as she got Canadian citizenship. "Citizenship will make everything easier for us," she'd written to him just 2 days ago. "Soon we can be together forever." I wasn't her boyfriend, I wasn't her love. I was her immigration sponsor, her pathway to citizenship, her fucking meal ticket. When Maidie came home that evening, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my laptop open, James's photos spread across the screen. She saw them and stopped walking. Her face didn't show surprise or guilt, just a cold calculation, like she was deciding how to handle this obstacle. "How long?" I asked. "Peterson, I can explain." "How long have you been lying to me?" She sat down across from me and looked me straight in the eyes. "You knew what this was, old man. Don't act surprised now." The woman I loved was gone. Maybe she'd never existed at all. "I gave you everything?" I whispered. "And I gave you what you needed," she said calmly. "A pretty young wife to make you feel important. Don't pretend this was about love." She was right, and that hurt more than anything else. I had bought an illusion, and she had sold it to me perfectly. I didn't leave the house for a week after confronting Maidie. I called in sick to my part-time job at the hardware store so many times they stopped calling back. I couldn't eat. Everything tasted like cardboard. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her laughing with James on that beach. I started drinking again, cheap vodka that burned my throat and made the shame a little easier to swallow. Maidie moved through the house like I wasn't there. She made her phone calls in the open now, speaking to James in fluent English, planning their life together in Australia. She talked about apartments in Sydney, about him flying to Canada to meet her, about how excited she was to start their real life together. I was a ghost in my own home. My daughter Sarah called on a Wednesday. I let it go to voicemail. She called again that evening. "Dad, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart, just tired." "Is everything okay with, what's her name, Maidie?" I couldn't tell her the truth. How could I explain that I'd put a stranger's name on the house she was supposed to inherit? How could I admit that I'd thrown away her future for a woman who never loved me? "We're fine," I lied. "Everything's fine." But nothing was fine. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and saw a pathetic old fool who'd given away everything for a pretty face and kind words. The man staring back at me was weak, desperate, and broken. Some nights I heard Maidie video chatting with James in the living room. She'd laugh at his jokes, tell him how much she missed him, describe the house they'd sell once she got her papers. My house, my life, my stupidity. I thought about my ex-wife Janet. Maybe she'd been right to leave. Maybe I was the kind of man who always needed someone to need him, even if it was fake. I thought about my job, the one I'd lost at 60. Maybe they'd been right to let me go. Maybe I was outdated, useless, easily replaced. I thought about Sarah, about the inheritance I'd stolen from her future. Most of all, I thought about the truth Maidie had told me. You knew what this was. Maybe I had known. Maybe I'd just chosen not to see it because loneliness hurt more than lies. Either way, I was drowning in my own house, and the woman I'd given everything to was watching me go under without reaching out her hand. On a grey February morning, I decided to try one last time. Maidie was making coffee in the kitchen, humming a Thai song I'd never heard. She looked beautiful in the morning light, the same woman who'd smiled at me across that jewelry table in Chiang Mai. "Can we talk?" I asked. She sighed like I was interrupting something important. "What about?" "About us, about fixing this." She turned to face me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been pity in her eyes. "Peterson," she said gently, "there is no us to fix." "There could be. I could take you to Thailand to meet your family. We could bring your mother to Canada legally. I don't need your help with my family." "Then what do you need? Even tell me what you need and I'll do it." She studied my face like she was looking at something mildly interesting in a museum. "I need you to sign these papers." She pulled a manila envelope from the counter and handed it to me. Inside were legal documents, a property transfer giving her full ownership of the house. "James is flying here next month," she said matter-of-factly. "We need you gone before he arrives. Sign the papers and you can leave with some dignity." "And if I don't sign?" Her expression didn't change, but her voice got colder. "Then I tell the police you brought me here under false pretenses, that you promised me marriage for sex, immigration fraud, maybe human trafficking. How do you think that will look for a 62-year-old man who gave a young foreign woman access to his house and bank accounts?" The papers felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. "You'd do that, even though it's not true?" "Truth is what people believe, Peterson. And who are they going to believe? The young immigrant woman or the old man who clearly took advantage of her?" I thought about fighting. I thought about lawyers and court battles and trying to prove she was the predator, not me. But I was tired. Bone-deep, soul-crushing tired. And maybe she was right. Maybe I had taken advantage. Maybe bringing her to Canada under the promise of love when I really wanted a nurse, a companion, a reason to feel alive again, maybe that was its own kind of fraud. I signed the papers with a steady hand. Maidie didn't thank me. She didn't apologize. She just took the documents and walked away. I packed my things that afternoon while she was out. I left the house key on the kitchen counter next to a note that said, "Good luck with James." She never called to say goodbye. And honestly, I was relieved. Sitting in my one-bedroom rental apartment 6 months later, I finally understood what had really happened. It wasn't just Maidie's fault. Maybe it wasn't her fault at all. I was a lonely, desperate man who wanted to feel needed. I wanted to be the hero who saved the beautiful young woman from poverty and gave her a better life. I wanted to feel powerful and generous and loved. The truth is, I didn't love Maidie. I loved the way she made me feel about myself. When she smiled at me in that market in Chiang Mai, I felt young again. When she said I was kind, I felt worthy. When she needed my help with immigration, I felt important. I gave her my house because it made me feel like a good man, like a provider, like someone who mattered. The woman I fell in love with never existed. I created her in my mind because I needed her to exist. I needed to believe that a beautiful young woman could see something special in a divorced, unemployed 60-year-old with nothing to offer but loneliness and money. Maidie saw an opportunity, and she took it. She was smarter than me, more strategic, and probably more honest about what our relationship really was. She never promised me forever. She never said she loved me first. She never asked me to put her name on the house. I offered all of those things because they made me feel good about myself. This isn't a story about a bad woman who stole from a good man. This is a story about a lonely man who bought an illusion and paid for it with everything he had. The house was just money. The real cost was learning that I was capable of lying to myself so completely. But maybe that's the first step toward becoming someone better. Maybe you have to see who you really are before you can decide who you want to be. I missed Maidie sometimes, or I missed the version of her I'd created in my mind, but I didn't miss the man I'd become when I was with her. That man was desperate and weak and willing to believe anything that made him feel less alone. This man, the one sitting in a small apartment with IKEA furniture and no illusions, this man was honest, and honest loneliness was better than beautiful lies. 18 months later, I'm still in the rental apartment. It's small but clean, and it's mine in a way the house never really was. I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Rodriguez who specializes in helping older men navigate loneliness and online relationships. She doesn't judge me for my mistakes. She just helps me understand why I made them. "You're not the first person to confuse need with love," she told me during one of our sessions, "and you won't be the last." I reconnected with Sarah, finally telling her the truth about what happened. She was hurt that I'd risked her inheritance for a stranger, but she forgave me faster than I forgave myself. "Dad," she said, "you were trying to find happiness. That's not a crime. You just went about it the wrong way." I got a job at Home Depot. The pay isn't much, but I like helping people fix things. There's something honest about hardware, screws and bolts and washers that do exactly what they're supposed to do. Nothing more, nothing less. I haven't tried to contact Maid. I don't know if she and James are happy in Australia. I don't want to know. Some nights I wonder if she ever thinks about me, but mostly I hope she doesn't. I hope she got what she was looking for. I've started going to a support group for men over 50 who've been through romance scams. We meet every Tuesday at the community center. There are 8 of us now, guys who fell for women in the Philippines, Vietnam, Colombia, Ukraine. Different countries, same story. Lonely men buying love from smart women who knew exactly how to sell it. We don't waste time feeling sorry for ourselves. Mostly we just talk about rebuilding, about learning to be alone without being lonely, about the difference between wanting someone and needing someone. I still get emails from dating sites sometimes, beautiful young women from exotic countries who think I'm handsome and kind and perfect for them. I delete them without reading past the first line. I'm 64 now. I live alone, work part-time, and spend weekends reading books I never had time for when I was married. I call Sarah every Sunday. I have dinner with my support group friends once a month. It's a quiet life, maybe even a small life, but it's honest. And after years of living in a beautiful lie, honest feels like the biggest luxury in the world. Sometimes people ask if I regret going to Thailand, if I wish I'd never met Maidee. The answer is complicated. I regret the choices I made. I regret the pain I caused Sarah. I regret losing the house and the money and the illusion of love. But I don't regret learning who I really am, even if he's not the hero I thought I was. The man I am now doesn't need to save anyone. He doesn't need to be needed. He's just trying to be honest, one day at a time. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than enough. Maybe that's everything.